Hello, besties. Allie Duzette here, and oh my gosh, did you just see that Brett Baier interview with Kamala Harris? We're going to cover it because I think it's really interesting in context of this upcoming election, which I'm keeping my eyes on very, very closely. As soon as I saw the clips emerging from this interview, I thought, oh my gosh, we have to take a look at this chart. What just happened? Wow. So with no further ado, let's pull up the charts and get talking. So okay, I've been looking at a bunch of different charts. I mean, so this whole thing came out about 2 hours ago, and then I found out about it maybe 1 hour ago, and then I watched a bunch of clips and I thought, oh my gosh, I know what time she walked into that studio for this recording at 5:15 p.m. That's when they said she showed up. So this is what happened. Okay. So Kamala Harris agreed to an interview with Brett Baier on Fox News, and it was supposed to be, I think, an hour long from 5 or like ending before 6 p.m. so that it could run unedited at 6 p.m. for the 6 p.m. news show. And then she showed up 15 minutes late at 5:15, and then her staffer said that maybe they could do 20 minutes instead of 30 minutes, and then apparently all during the episode, the staffers were losing their minds, like trying to like wrap it up, like, come on, like end this interview. And like really something, if you haven't watched it, I hope that you do, and I hope that you recognize what you're seeing, because what I think, I mean, like what I'm reading is that this has already made a huge impact on people's perceptions of her and what is going on. Like, I think that this is another one of those big moments in this election, kind of like that first debate between Trump and Biden. I think that this may have been another kind of moment like that. So let's go ahead and look at the charts. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, so on the inside here, we have Kamala's birth chart, and I haven't really analyzed that here, so I wanted to like cover a couple of interesting things because she has a lot of really interesting stuff going on here. Now, her time is said to be extremely accurate from what I found when I was looking up the birth time, because usually when you have a public figure, you don't always know the exact time. The places that I found said that this was like a super accurate time. Now, we've mentioned in videos regarding her before that she was born on a full moon, and she truly was. Like, I say I was born on a full moon, but I'm like, the moon is 3 degrees off for me, which means that about like an hour, like 2 hours later, then it was the true full moon. I still count myself as a full moon baby because it's so close, but she is like, look, 27:48, 27:39. That is tight, okay? Whenever you have a full moon, if a person is born on the full moon, um, what it means is that their sense of self and their it's kind of like their mind and their heart are like as far apart as it can get for somebody. Um, they can tend to view themselves much more objectively than someone, say, with a sun and moon together, like on the new moon. Like, if you're born on the new moon, how you feel and who you are feels the same to you. So if you like feel bad, you feel like you are bad. That's an oversimplification, but the full moon babies do not end up having that. Like, they can feel really bad and like rationally be like, well, but that's not me, so it can lend this kind of objectivity to emotions. And the other thing about full moon babies is that, if you think about the moon, in real life, during the full moon, that's when the moon is the most illuminated. So this is one reason why so many full moon why so many public figures are full moon babies. I would say more so than like new moon babies, because their own star charts support and hold the space for full illumination of self. So I had an interview with Lila Sage recently, or like, you can scroll back and see the videos that I've done with her, where we talked about this, and she's a full moon baby, and I'm a full moon baby, and like Trump's a full moon baby, and Kamala Harris is a full moon baby, and I think Biden also may be a full moon guy. I can't remember, but there's a lot of full moon action going on among people who are really out there in the public eye. That tends to be something that we can see. So that is very interesting for her. She's a Libra, Okay, and yeah, her birthday is like coming right up. So that's really interesting. I should run her solar return, but not right now. So quick recap. Um, she's got her moon in Aries in this 11th house that's going to make her very, very sensitive to and even belligerent about the public opinion of her. It's going to drive her to seek attention from the public eye. The 11th house is all about large groups of people, and it's about the desires of our hearts. And what this is showing me is that she desires to shine in front of the masses. That is something that's very important to her. She wants the credibility. She wants her personality to be honored and admired. And she really wants the whole world to see that about her. And when they don't, it's probably going to really tick her off. Aries is going to be a little bit of a belligerent energy. If it's not being honored the way that it thinks that it should be, it can be like a little bit mad about it. And I think that we can see that when, you know, Brett is kind of like in this like famous moment where she's like, you know what I mean. And he's like, I don't know. Or she's like, you know what I'm talking about. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Oh my gosh. Okay. She has her North Node conjunct the ascendant, which is so interesting that her destiny is to just be herself. Like she has a calling to just be herself, and as she shows up as she is, um I don't things have worked out for her. And I think we can agree, like, no matter how you feel about her just like doing whatever she wants has led her to where she is, you know. So this is a very interesting placement. Of course, this part of fortune exact the south node, exact the descendant. So interesting. I have a lot of thoughts about her fifth house sun, that 12th house Jupiter, but it's okay. I'll have to do a whole series just on her, but let's go ahead and talk about what just happened. Okay. On the inside here, we have Kamala Harris. On the outside, we have tonight when she walked into that studio and took her first breath as part of the interviewing process at 5:15 p.m. in New York City, New York, New York. Oh boy. Immediately, the first thing that we have to note, of course, is this transiting Saturn, which is conjunct her natal Chiron. And I think that this is a transit that is I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how it plays out for her. Okay? So of course Saturn is the lord of karma. Okay? It is the god of the harvest. Okay? As you sow, so shall you reap. Wherever Saturn is, it's going to call your consequences back to you. And traditionally Saturn has been known as a malefic, or like a bad guy planet, because most of the time people put out bad stuff into the world and then they get bad stuff back. And so then their Saturn transits are a big mess because they were a mess and Saturn called that back to them. I love Saturn. I feel like my Saturn is a good guy in my chart. I feel like when it's lighting up, I feel like it's usually like pretty good, but I like try my best to like put out good into the world. So like comes on back. But this is a very interesting situation for her. So Chiron here deals with your deepest soul wounds, but it also deals with your wisdom and like the life lessons that you've learned, the life lessons that you impart to other people. And so this is just like very, very interesting. And one thing that I learned recently is that 14 degrees of Pisces is actually, like, when you look at the night sky as a whole, it's right underneath where Aquarius, this is Aquarius. Now, the constellation of Aquarius is a man holding an urn of water, and he pours out the water. Okay. And the water falls right onto 14 degrees of Pisces. And so what we have here is her Chiron is right under this stream of divine wisdom from Aquarius. So what does that mean for her? It means that she has huge soul wounds around receiving divine wisdom and communicating that divine wisdom and being a teacher of that divine wisdom. And so the big question as like voters and as humans like evaluating this public figure, we have to ask ourselves like, okay, how healed is she in the ability to receive divine wisdom and to communicate and be the teacher? Chiron deals with Where are we wounded and where are we really masterful? Where are we amazing teachers? So she has this huge capacity to be a spiritual teacher. Is she living up to that capacity? And so I think with Saturn here highlighting this in this moment of this interview, I mean, like, I invite you to go and watch that whole thing and judge for yourself. Like, what do you personally think? Like, if we're saying like the law of karma is showing up in this interview right now, and it is hitting on her deepest soul wounds. And I kind of feel for her because this 10th house Chiron, the 10th house is your reputation, it's your career, it's how other people see you. What does that tell us? It tells us when people don't admire her, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And I would bet that her soul is literally in pain right now. Like I would guess that her soul and her body are in pain right now over the public response to this interview, if this makes sense. Um, but not just that. I mean, like what this is telling me is that she's going to feel a call to be in the public eye, but how the public responds to her is going to be very, very painful to her. You know, if they don't love her, again, with this like Aries, this fire moon that kind of needs to be adored. And if it's not, see, if she's being loved and adored, and people love her, then she's going to be like very happy and it's going to be this huge high for her. And when that's not how people feel, it's going to be not just a low, it's going to be like devastating. Okay, that is my interpretation of what I am seeing here. So I don't know. I guess prayers for Kamala Harris tonight because I don't know that she will sleep very well. And I don't know, like this was a rough night for her. I think that we can agree. So let's see. And this is also interesting that this Saturn is exactly opposed to her natal Uranus, which creates this interesting stellium in Virgo in the fourth house, which I hadn't noticed earlier. Um, let's take a tiny look at it because all of that is going to be triggering as a part of this interview as well. So remember that Virgo is very analytical, it's very detail oriented. And here she has Pluto, the planet of death and transformation, and it's sandwiched by Uranus, the planet of like sudden cataclysm, and but like as an invitation to step into your authenticity, and then Venus, who of course is like love and beauty. And I think that this is really interesting because she is definitely um let me think of how to put this, but I mean, I was just gonna say she's leveraged her beauty and her body as part of her political journey and as part of her life journey. This fifth house sun is in the house of sexuality, and that is what she leveraged to get into her political positions. And then, of course, Jupiter in the 12th house, the charm behind closed doors. If you're familiar with her Willie Brown saga and how she got into the career that she's in, this is just a really interesting placement. But when I see all of this going on in Virgo, what that's telling me is that um it's probably a big sore spot to her how her brain works and her articulation. Okay, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, who governs communication. And I mean, like, I invite you to go and watch this interview for yourself. And as you're thinking of this Saturn, this transiting Saturn that's highlighting this axis for her of Chiron on the one side, her deepest soul wounds. Um, is she receiving divine wisdom or is she so wounded that she can't? Like, I don't know. You will be the judge of that. And then that is also triggering this stellium right here that is going to be unexpected surprises, inviting her to be authentic. Like, are we being authentic here? That Pluto is going to be triggering up big transformation. Uh, it's gonna feel like death. I mean, like what this is telling me is that her whole life is probably characterized by situations that show up by surprise, that allow her to receive things. That's that Venus, by using her physical body, which is going to be that Pluto plus Venus, and it's going to be I'm sorry, I'm like trying to think of like how this is, but with this interview, I want you to think about that Pluto in Virgo and how like, do you feel like she is feeling like a death experience as part of this interview? Like where Pluto is, that's where we can feel like very triggered and where we just are feeling like, oh my gosh, this is gonna kill me. Do we feel like this was triggered during this interview with that Saturn transiting? Okay, so very, very interesting. And of course, we've got this part of fortune transiting really nearby. And so I have some thoughts about that, but I want to shelve that for a tiny minute. Um, I want to take a look at the aspectarian really fast. I have not looked super deeply at this part of the chart yet because I was looking at other things, but we have the transiting moon trining Mars. That's going to be highlighting the conflict, um, which I think we saw as part of this interview, a lot of conflict. And of course, it's just coming right up on her birthday. So we see all these conjunctions right here because she is, her natal sun is conjunct the is conjunct Mercury. And then do you see this transiting Mercury is right there? She just had a Mercury return, which is just so interesting. It's kind of like a reset in her communication abilities. So I'm interested to see if you watch this interview, how do you feel like her communication abilities were? Now, her Mercury is in Scorpio, and Scorpio is it's the deepest water sign. It's the fixed water sign, um, which is really interesting because it's represented by the Scorpion, who does not live in water. He lives in the desert. He accesses the water where there is no water, which is really interesting. He accesses the water of the darkness, the water that you have to dig to in the desert to find, the water that no one else can find. And I feel like some of the pros of having a Mercury in Scorpio can be that you can communicate very deep concepts very thoroughly, and you can dig and find stuff that other people aren't seeing. On the other hand, when you're digging and finding concepts that other people aren't seeing, sometimes it can be a little delusional, if you know what I mean. Like, and we're communicating things that are not as deep as we think they are and stuff like that. So there's going to be this drive to find depth, and maybe we do find it and maybe we don't find it. There's going to be a drive to communicate that depth. Do we actually have a grasp on that depth or not? So these are questions that I don't know. I think we're all qualified to like view this for ourselves and like make our own conclusions about that. This Uranus so close to her Jupiter has been going around there for a while, but it's getting closer. I don't know. They're both in retrograde right now. And the transiting Jupiter is right next to her ascendant, which is just a really, really interesting situation. Just taking a look. Let's go ahead and let's switch around these charts. I wanted to take a look at it in the context of America's birthday chart real fast. So this on the, let's switch it again. Okay, on the inside, this is America's birth chart with a rising sign of 12 degrees of Sagittarius. And let's just take a look. I mean, having Jupiter exact Mars, this is a placement that we have to keep our eyes on because it's going to be, there's this Jupiter Mars action that's been happening over the past little while. Where is, oh, come on, natal Jupiter, there you go. So we had Mars and Jupiter doing kind of like a mutual reception action for the last eclipse that we just had. And Mars moves pretty quick. I think what I'm talking about is the lunar eclipse that took place in September. So now it's been a full month, and I don't know, we have some interesting Mars and Jupiter stuff coming up with the election. And I'm going to have Lila Sage on to talk about it because I think it's like pretty critical. But to me, it's kind of interesting that Jupiter, the planet of blessings, is exact Mars for the moment of this interview, like a blessing on the nation. I don't know. You can interpret it how you will. This is interesting that the transiting part of fortune is exact America's natal Neptune. It's almost like this blessing on, I mean, Neptune deals with our confusion, it deals with our delusion and our understanding of illusions. will any illusions come to light because of this kind of placement? That's, again, something that we'll have to conclude for ourselves. And of course, I mean, this guy's the biggie. Natal America's Chiron is at 20 degrees, and it's going to be there. Right now it's at 21 degrees. It's retrograding. And guys, let me pull up election day. Here's election day. Look, it's exact. And I believe it was also exact during the April 8th eclipse. I think that we're in for some serious reckoning around America's deepest soul wounds. And tonight was another indication of that, but election day is certainly a massive indication of that. Oh my goodness. We'll have Lila Sage over to talk about this more on a different day. But going back to the original charts. Okay, this is Kamala Harris in the middle again and election day on the outside. I'm just looking at it because I haven't looked at it yet, but oh, that is really, really interesting with her natal Neptune exact the transiting ascendant for that day. It makes me wonder if there will be some element of illusion or delusion around what she believes the results are of this election. I don't even know what that means, but I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to see for ourselves. Let's go back to the Brett Baier interview. Any final things here that we want to talk about? I mean, over here in the transiting chart, we have the North Node and the Moon and Chiron all in her 11th house. Okay, drawing up the deep soul wounds for her, a big focus on her own emotional journey. Like from her perspective, this is a big emotionally wounding event, but it's part of her destiny. That is what that North Node is telling me. Like this is part of her journey, and this was an important event to be happening for her journey. I mean, as all events are for all of our journeys, but just a very, very, very interesting setup here. Okay, well, in conclusion, what do we say about this? I don't know, except that the stars have aligned for some karma to be shining through the vehicle of this interview. That is what I am seeing with this Saturn placement opposite Uranus. Remember that Uranus invites us all to step into our greatest authenticity. And when Saturn and Uranus are aspecting like that, what is going to happen is catastrophe. It doesn't have to be catastrophe, but what it's going to be is surprises that show up in our lives that perfectly align with who we are on the inside right now to help us pull out of ourselves what we need to see to help us become more authentic. I hope that makes sense. So like Uranus is famous for earthquakes, volcanoes, natural disasters like hurricanes, this kind of thing. When you have like an earthquake in your life, it makes you really forces you to think about what is really important to me. What do I actually care about? You know, what doesn't matter and what does matter? How am I going to show up in a life or death situation? Okay, and so here, this was not a life or death situation for her. It may have been a life or death situation for her election. It may have been a life or death situation for her campaign. And so that is the really interesting thing here to consider with that Uranus and transiting Saturn opposition. Are we seeing the law of the harvest activating in her space and saying, Kamala, do you deserve to sit on this stage? Like, do you deserve to be here? What have you planted and what are you harvesting? What did you already plant? What have you already harvested? And how are you going to carry that harvest into the future? And does the public eye see, like, does the public see eye to eye with you on your perceived accomplishments or not? With all of this 11th house stuff going on, does the public see eye to eye with you, you know? And let's take a look, because I think that this is an inconjunct really fast. Okay, transiting moon, and we're looking at natal Pluto, and the transiting moon. Oh yeah, it is an inconjunct. So what what that means is, ah, man, I like feel bad for her, guys. That Pluto especially is being triggered here, but it's almost like, um, when you have an inconjunct, they can't they can't coexist. It's like one or the other, or one or the other, and they kind of have to take some turns. And so what turns were taken here, kind of these like wounds and like depth of feeling around her ability to communicate and to think clearly, that Virgo energy, and the need to be honored and respected in the public eye. So it's kind of like she's having to go through, like, I need you to respect me. I need you to respect me. I have a lot of trouble thinking clearly and communicating clearly. I've got Pluto in Virgo, and it's right next to Uranus, and can I communicate the way that I want to communicate? And so I think I haven't even seen the whole interview yet. I just saw a bunch of clips, but I'm going to sit down and watch this whole thing because I'm so fascinated by what just happened. But from what I saw, I felt like even in these little clips, what I'm seeing is her moon saying, respect me, respect me, respect me. And then that Pluto, Uranus, Virgo stellium, but especially that Pluto in the middle saying like, oh man, trying to think clearly and communicate clearly, it is a little bit of a struggle. It kind of feels like a death and rebirth situation with that Pluto energy. I don't know. I'm interested to see what you guys think about this. And again, I didn't watch the whole interview, but I did see a bunch of clips. I'm gonna go watch it now. But I wanted to get this out there while it was like totally fresh on my mind. Like, wow, what did we just behold? Was this another watershed moment in terms of this election? I think, let's see, it's October 16th. The election is on November the 5th. So we're just weeks away. I'm really interested to see how it turns out. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Like and subscribe, coming out on Facebook and Intuitive Healing with Ali Duzette. I hope that you have a fabulous night.